My name's Ollie O'Donoghue, an industry analyst here with SDI, and I'll be your host for today. I have two DevOps experts with me, Barclay Rae of Barclay Rae Consulting, the man behind ITSM Goodness and the Chief Executive of ITSMF UK, and Adam O'Brien, the Product Marketing Manager for SunView Software, who are kindly sponsoring this webinar. Please do ask any questions as and when they come up, and I'll put them to our experts at the end of their presentations. So first of all, I'll be joined by Barclay Rae. Hello, Barclay.
Hello, how are you, Ollie?
I'm absolutely fine, and yourself?
I'm good, I'm all set to go. I'm ready to go and looking forward to this discussion and all the sorts of things that will come out about DevOps, how we can make it work for the service desk.
Wonderful, well, excellent. So you're going to be talking about kind of the real-life application of DevOps for the service desk. So I'll hand over the reins to you.
Okay, thank you. Can I just confirm that you can see my screen okay?
Yeah, see, perfect, thanks.
Yeah, I'm just switching on the PowerPoint now. So very nice to be talking to you all about DevOps and how that works for the service desk in particular. And I suppose I'd like to start off with some definitions that are a bit wider than just the service desk and what we mean by DevOps, because it's one of those things at the moment that's it's the current hype. Everybody talks DevOps, wants to use DevOps. We see adverts for DevOps roles, there's DevOps tools, there's all sorts of things that we can fall back on and say, right, well, yes, we're doing DevOps. No, we're not doing DevOps. How do we do DevOps? Do we have DevOps for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? So hopefully my part of this will just be to sort of burst some of those bubbles and just make it clear what DevOps actually is, and particularly in the context of the current world of IT and IT service management, which is a constantly changing one, I think, as we all know. It's where the whole nature not only of technology but the organizations around technology, the IT department that we've known and loved for many years, is being challenged as well. And I think it's useful to put it in that context and really be understanding where DevOps sits with that, where the service desk sits with that, and what kind of challenges there are going forward. And where that lies, I think for many years we've argued about what the CIO should be, the head of IT, what sort of level they should be at, and what sort of things they should be doing, and ultimately a lot of this does come down to them. So we'll be sort of focusing on that as well, and as Ollie mentioned, taking questions on that. This is an obvious question: do we need an IT department? There's many challenges that we face at the moment. One of them being actually the traditional role of the internal retained IT department is so much under threat, not only from sort of outsourcing, offshoring, multi-sourcing that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, but also because the nature of technology and how it's developed and implemented has changed and is changing significantly, to the point where you could almost argue that I think we're going past the part where we argue whether or not we need infrastructure. In most cases, we might do, but we don't always need to have that. We can get that from various sources. But even the nature of how we develop and implement and manage the services that we deliver has changed, to the point where the divide between IT and business really has gone, and I think that's a good thing. In some ways it's quite challenging because it does force us to say, right, well, effectively every organization in the world pretty much is hugely dependent on technology. There are very few that really don't need it, and in a much more direct way than it was even 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. When I worked on that side of IT, we regularly had major failures of our mainframe systems. Nobody got sacked and not really very much happened. Nowadays, you lose your key services for 5 or 10 minutes and it's business critical for all concerned, because the whole business is run by and through the technology. And actually, the point is, I think, for many people that the whole business is an IT company. Guy I know who's CEO of one of the large financial organizations in the UK was saying recently, we are an IT company that does financial services rather than the other way around. So do we actually need to have the internal IT department? And if we do, and I think my view is that we do still need that ownership, that understanding of technology, and that understanding of how that technology works with the business, as long as we understand as well that we're supporting people, not just technology. Our success is dependent on our ability to interact positively and professionally, and to collaborate across teams, across departments, and with external partners. And the whole nature of, I think, our success in business and IT, or business and technology, must come down to that. I've recently been involved in co-authoring the latest ITIL publication, where we focus very much on things like communication skills. What it actually takes to communicate successfully. Communication is a two-way process. There's no single way of communicating, but we must recognize that we have to have our communication acknowledged as well as just broadcast, all those kind of things. So that's a key element, I think, and part of the new world of IT is understanding that we need to have and demonstrate and deliver a number of different skills that are not just technology. It's difficult for most people that are interested in IT and technology are interested in IT and technology. They don't want to be marketeers or accountants or, the contractual managers. But we need to have those skills delivered within IT organizations, because the critical success factors of what IT does depends on the ability to be able to manage relationships with multiple organizations across a number of different complex environments, across a number of different commercial and contractual environments, to be able to communicate and market and understand the business and relationship impact of what we're doing, when a service goes down, when we implement a new service. All those things must be part of what we do in IT. And fundamentally, when we're buying services or buying technology, we must understand the whole supply chain, i.e. who else is involved in delivering parts of that and how that will impact the overall service. So all those things are absolutely critical in terms of the background to what we might call DevOps. If you think about it, what I'm saying there is we need a number of different skills. We need to work across a number of different departments and areas. And the fundamental idea behind DevOps, for me, there are two. One is more on the development and technology side, and we'll hear more about that later, around about how we develop and how we use measurement and metrics and how we understand better what we're doing in order to speed up the process. So there's the whole kind of agile agenda. Ultimately, a lot of it is based around the agile approach, but actually it's much wider than that. And this is one of the misapprehensions, I think, that is out there about DevOps, that it is another new cool development methodology, when in fact it is meant to be a collaborative, cross-functional approach. So the clues in the title, I suppose, Dev and Ops, development and operations, working together in harmony and not, dug in against each other across a battlefield and chucking things across back and forth across the trenches. So, I mean, DevOps, and for those of you that haven't engaged with it, I mean, it's evolved over the last few years, based around some, there's no standard framework or a methodology. It's based around a variety of content, most notably the Phoenix Project book that was published 3 or 4 years ago. Which sets out a new way of, even the way that that's written as a novella almost, it sets out a new context for how we look at IT. But for many, it's a new context, I think, for how you engage with service management without it having to be based on the kind of old and rather slightly dated looking ITIL approach. And so it talks to a new audience, it talks to a much younger I'm holding up my fingers here in inverted commas, millennial audience, but it does, because it's of a much more cool and modern looking approach. It has been associated with, you know, the Bay Area unicorn companies, startups, but it's not just restricted to that, and now it's becoming part of the mainstream. I think in 2015 we really saw it starting to hit the mainstream in terms of large traditional type organizations embracing it, either doing it to some extent or seriously looking at how they were going to do it. That's still a big challenge. How do you change the culture of your organization to move from traditional silo-based ITIL waterfall approach to, you know, what is agile and modern and a much more, I suppose, external looking and agile. The key things for me, I think, and we'll hear later on from Adam more around about some of the technology and how we can apply some of that, but really is some of the key principles behind this, I think, are really important, about teamwork, about collaboration, about mutual respect and principles, how you work together. So, you know, the whole concepts of getting people in a room, you know, having pizza and beer or whatever, but actually just engaging with other people, not a team over there who you habitually describe as being useless. Everybody's good at something, everybody has challenges in other areas. We're all part of the same team one way or another. We need to work together, and that's the big thing for me that really has, I think, helped to develop the approach of DevOps. Is it another hype? Well, to some extent it is. I don't know whether we'll still be talking about DevOps in another few years. There'll be another manifestation of it. Is it just confined to millennials and unicorns? Well, I don't know, but I do think it is a really useful way in for a lot of people to doing some of the really important things in service management. And I think whatever we think of that, wherever we sit on the, you know, I'm a traditionalist or a modernist, we must recognize that it's a valuable way of actually engaging a different audience. Just in a little bit more detail, and we can drill down, and Adam will go into more in his presentation, but, you know, it is effectively a collaborative approach. It's principles based. It is trying to unify two quite polarized ways of working, which are speed, agile, and control, which would be the ITIL approach, I guess. And it's trying to work on the principles of human interaction and common sense, H to H, human to human. We get bogged down talking about B2B and C2C and all, B2C and all that kind of stuff. The things that we see being described as, is it a role? No. A system? No. A team? No. Methodology? You know, these are just ways that we get, if you spend too much time on social media, you start to believe this kind of stuff. But the thing I think is slightly disappointing is that there's still, on the jobs front, too many DevOps roles that are effectively just development roles in a different guise. I'd like to see more collaborative, cross-functional DevOps roles being advertised and implemented. Some of the key areas I think to look at, we've talked a little bit about culture, about people and change and experimentation, but a few other principles behind this as well. The idea of infrastructure as code and continuous delivery, it's moving away from the waterfall approach, absolutely, that we constantly manage to deliver new services rather than, you know, we have a big project and we chuck it over the fence, somebody else gets on with it and we move on. The whole principle being, if you write something, you have to support it, or be able to support it, be ready to support it. Lean, doing things in small batches, and really focusing on value, and again, not just getting caught up in the whole sort of project paraphernalia. Measurement is absolutely key here, measuring as much as we can to identify improvement, and there will be more of that to come in terms of how we might measure. But as an indication, I mean, I think one of the fundamental areas that we probably haven't looked at enough in service management is just understanding at root cause where issues start and one thing, I remember doing this years ago when I was a service desk manager, which was to agree that part of the coding and the causal coding that we would use when we closed incidents would be to identify if it was a software problem from a pick list of, it was quite basic, but just simple software phases that we would identify that where the problem had initiated. So if it was a coding failure, or design failure, build failure, or test failure, those things gave you a clue, a way into understanding a little bit more about, you know, where things might be going wrong. And, you know, again, the measurement part fits very well with the new ITIL practitioner approach, which is heavily focused on continual service improvement, but also on metrics and measurement. So, you know, when people say, oh, it's ITIL versus DevOps, they really aren't don't know what they're talking about. But as I mentioned, the whole idea being collaboration. So, you know, we've got this combination of agile, lean, speed, continuous definition, continuous delivery, people, culture, and collaboration. All these things are the key principles behind this. So when you're talking about the service desk, then obviously the service desk need to be involved. I mean, this has been, I guess, in the SDI approach, a key element for many years of, you know, making sure that we involve the service desk and front level people as much as possible in the development life cycle, because they are the people that are going to support it. And this is in effect turning that on its head a little bit, so that you would expect to see DevOps people, developers actually participating in frontline support. Certainly you do in early life support, but beyond that as well, to make sure that the service and the understanding of the impact of failure is fully understood. So, I mean, I've probably covered some of those things in terms of value. It's not just a new thing for startups. It's a focus on principles, and it's a new way into a new audience. So that really does please me, because for a long time we've been worried that, you know, ITIL would start to look a bit too out of date and not attract a new audience when the world is changing, things are moving fast. I think DevOps is a great way into that. The other practical way in, I think, which is a roundabout collaboration, and the focus, I think, for how you can make DevOps work, implementing it in a traditional ITIL environment, is to use something like service design, service catalog as the catalyst. So for DevOps, you need a catalog as well as you do in ITIL, and that, to do that properly, requires getting people together, probably in a workshop, to actually define and agree what those services are. For me, this is a great way of actually combining those two cultures together and getting, I suppose, the traditional ITIL people and some of the more development and TOGAF design architecture type people together to make it work. Some of the other things, I suppose, just moving on quickly, that we'll be looking for: continuous development, using sprints and agile approaches. The whole concept of minimal viable product, you know, not trying to gild the lily, produce something that's actually required. And again, we're better to get great input on that than from people who are actually working at the front line in the service desk. So these are the kind of key points. I think we're looking at respect culture, we're looking at automation, and fast, short development. All part of this whole principle that the role of IT needs to change, needs to move on from being a systems provider to a service provider, from engineers to retailers, from geeks to brokers. As Charlie Raho says, you know, it's the next stage, the retail age of IT. We're not just engineers anymore. And that moves me on, just to sort of close off with, you know, how do we make this happen? The CIO needs to really be stepping up in terms of his or her position in an organization. They can't just be the best qualified technical person. They've got to have a business focus. They've got to make themselves heard and listened to at the board level, and they must be ready to challenge and disrupt their own organization, because on the one hand, the board and the business is saying to them, you must demonstrate value, you must show how you're doing things properly. You need to be able to sense and respond. You need to be able to react to what we need, both in terms of speed and control. And to do that, traditional IT organizations can't do that all themselves. So we're really needing that role to really stand out and not just be the sort of ultimate promotion before retirement. DevOps overall, I think, is not a new concept. Agile isn't a new concept, and collaboration isn't a new concept, but those two things together as a kind of way of bringing IT organizations together is a new context for it. So I think it's really relevant. And the service desk sits very much at the center of that because they have so much input on how things can be supported better, and they need to be involved early in the development life cycle so that they know how to support it once there is an issue or a challenge. So that's the kind of introduction for me as to what DevOps is, how it might be approached, what kind of key issues might arise out of it, very much at the cultural level. It can't just be thought of as a development approach. It's an all-encompassing development and operational approach, and we need to think about how culturally we would introduce it to our organizations. I think that's the 20 minutes allocated to me, and I just covered those slides. Just handing back the control here. Any questions there, Ollie? Anybody firing anything at me at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot. I mean, you covered a great deal in 20 minutes, so that's excellent. So we've got, I'll fire off a question straight away. So a lot of people kind of interested in culture. This is from Mike. And so a lot of people understand that kind of a tool and a process, it's easy to get a tool, it's easy to get a process written, but changing the culture of an organization is obviously the hardest part. Do you have any tips to an organization that's really struggling with kind of trying to embed a DevOps culture?
Well, I suppose the main tip is not to try and set up a big project to do organizational change just for this. I think that probably the best way is to find ways in. I mentioned service catalog. To me, that is the key one, because it does help to force people to think about what they're doing from the service point of view, and also to do it together. But any other collaborative approach where you need to get people together. The other one would be to also use more people from outside of the IT organization. We're seeing more of this. I think it's called enterprise service management, where IT support and ITIL type functions are being delivered across other back office functions like HR, finance, marketing, and so on. So that really helps, I think, to set the agenda that says, well, I don't care who you are in IT, we're all working together, and we can do that with other departments, so why can't we do it with our own organization? So any way that you can start iteratively to show that collaboration really works, I think is going to help with this. And it's got to be genuine as well. The whole thing about respect and removing blame culture, you've got to do it based on positive and real relationships. You can't just force it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks for that. I'll tell you, because we're kind of at the midway point. We've got a couple of questions still here, but I think it'd be great to ask kind of you and Adam as a panel. So thanks,
okay.
Barclay. And what I'll do now, so next I've got Adam O'Brien, who's the product marketing manager for SunView Software, who has over 8 years of service desk experience at all levels. So hi, Adam.
Hey, how's it going, Ollie?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. This great Friday morning for us over here on the stateside.
Oh, okay, it's afternoon for us here, so that's good. So you're going to be taking us through three distinct ways that today's service desk automation can support DevOps initiatives and strategies while maintaining organizational goals and standards, which it sounds brilliant. So over to you, Adam.
Cool. Thanks so much, Ollie. And once again, I'm Adam over here at SunView Software. I'm the product marketing manager. And I will be taking through, like Ollie just said, 3 key ways service desk automation can support your DevOps initiatives. So before we get started, I want to get us kicked off on the right foot with a quote from Gartner, and that is, to deliver at DevOps speed and scale, the technology framework must be designed for human by exception, where as much work as possible is performed by programmatic means. So Barclay did a great job covering what DevOps is and how that looks inside of an IT organization and for organizations and enterprises. And so I've got kind of a horizontal kind of layout of what normally that coding process looks like from the dev side of things. So you go from collaborative development all the way through continuous testing and then continuous release and deployment. Finally, once that's out in the wild, you look at continuous monitoring and continuous customer feedback, where then it just loops back to the beginning with that feedback coming from customers and users, depending on what is going on, what's doing great, and then quickly fixing and applying those patches of bugs to incidents or any kind of things that may pop up. Now, within that, where does the service desk fit? So there's really 3 distinct ways, at least, that I'll be covering today, and that ranges from incident and issue tracking, making sure those are connected up and integrated with each other. We're also looking at DevOps toolchain and fitting that within having change management fit with that DevOps toolchain, and the benefits of what that will actually produce and what that can do for your organization, as well as finally metrics reporting. As we all know, that success without knowing how you got there, isn't going to be replicatable nor any good for your business. And the biggest thing behind all this is we have a saying here in the office where it isn't dev versus ops. It's actually dev plus ops. But I going through all this, I like to add in it's dev plus ops plus your service desk. So looking into the first point that we're going to cover right here is it's streamlining feedback by integrating incident management and issue tracking. So to cover what this actually, the case for looking at this and why we want these two connected is, by ensuring your incident management and issue tracking tools are integrated, you can leverage specific automations and accelerate incidents to proper teams, streamlining feedback and reducing mean time to resolution for problems. So we've taken a look at that little diagram at the end. So we have our users who are going to be using our product that we deliver to them. At that point, we usually have users submit tickets through your help desk or your service requester, relaying problems or incidents that they may run into while using that product. At that point, then, we're looking at getting into the service desk management portion. So we're tracking those incidents as they go. Now, what we're able to do then is, if we have integration with the issue tracking, we can then quickly see, are these incidents related? Are we getting more and more of these? And at that point, if we have a group of, we used to take a look at anywhere between 5 to 10 specific incidents, we're then considering that a problem, and then we would roll that up as an issue to our development team for resolution. Now, the ability to do that on the fly not only reduces manual tracking and manual follow-up with, say we'll do email, to make sure and where we're at with those issues as they go, but our dev team was able to actually leave notes as far as the status and where we're heading and how close we were to a resolution, as well as when the resolution was actually pushed. And that was pushed actually over to our incident tickets, which then we were able to follow up with our customers and let them know things were resolved, and that eliminated a lot of downtime due to communication or stalling as far as waiting for word back from one team or another, and everyone ended up being happy in the long run. So some of the key ways that I know I've used in the past from a service desk side of things to kind of help procure that connection to issue tracking is, using assignment automations based on application or other associated CIs. Now, what I would do is we would have specific customers that would call in, and that we would know that, when they called in, it was usually having to do with software bugs or glitches or something that needed to be reported directly straight to our dev team and tracked as an issue. So within that, once we had the automation in place, that would get automatically funneled with a predefined message to our customers, and then get a notification was directly sent to our development team to let them know, hey, here's something that we need to take a look at right away, and let's get this thing rolling. Another great way is to automate notifications to your dev team on tickets against a business service or a CI. I think the best way that I always ran into this was when we had our cloud provider would go down, every once, it would seem like a year or so, at one of my previous jobs, and we would actually have an automation set up that when that happened, we would get notifications not only to the service desk team, but also to our dev team as well as our operations team to let everyone know that this is what's happening and this is the expected time to get back up online, or these are the processes that we're taking to get back up and running. And then we would be able to relay that quickly to our customers, once again eliminating downtime due to manual notifications or sitting around waiting, not knowing anything. Another thing would be is integrated collaboration tools for ops to dev discussions. Now this is one of the fun ones that I really enjoy, and this can be anywhere from in-house built solutions to things like Slack or HipChat or even Skype. I know that we make huge efforts to use Slack to communicate not only on my current marketing team but also throughout the company to make sure that we're always communicating and knowing what's going on with anyone, and if someone needs help, we're quickly there and available to provide that help and feedback and assistance. And that just, once again, eliminates downtime waiting for help, and we know we have each other's back right away. And finally, ticket promotion functionality for service desk staff. So that's tying back to kind of what I covered to begin with. When we got tickets that were grouped in and quickly grouped from incident to problem, we were able to escalate that quickly. That's something you want to the dev team or to the additional tier 2 support. That's something that you definitely want to make sure you're doing. Once again, eliminating any possible downtime and kind of streamlining your efforts is going to pay huge dividends in the long run. And those are just a few of the things you could do, but what are the benefits? Well, you can improve visibility into incidents caused by application changes, and this kind of adds the service desk into that DevOps loop or chain that you should see fairly often in a lot of diagrams, where we are now putting ourselves solely in the whole process. You get incidents that are tracked due to say a system update. You know that system update happened because communication channels are wide open, and you're quickly and easily able to communicate that to your customers and also streamline the request for resolution on whatever changes, whatever issues that change caused. You can also take proactive steps to eradicate repeat errors by pinpointing root causes, and this is coming down to, once again, if you have the same incident popping up over and over, you can forward that over and say, hey, dev team, this is what's happened multiple times now, 3 times in the last month. It's the same issue. What's going on? And then we can use that to take a look at the issue tracking to them and see, okay, maybe what we're doing is just a kind of quick fix. Let's take a look and see what the deeper root cause of that is, and then hopefully eliminate that altogether. And finally, you can increase the visibility of high-impact incidents and quickly escalate to streamlined resolution. And that cuts down on resolution times as well as increases service desk ROI, which I'm not sure I've ever met a service desk manager who wouldn't want to have those things. Moving on, that leads us to improve visibility by integrating change management into the DevOps toolchain. Now, the why or the case for doing this is pretty cool. I'm a fan of change management, and let's take a look at this right here. For a more efficient change orchestration, organizations need a single source of change management that provides complete visibility for risk management, metrics reporting, and compliance auditing. Now, slipping in your change management into that tool chain, I know a ton of companies that use a myriad of different tools, and that can range from collaboration tools like Slack to tools like Chef and Puppet, or maybe you're using Docker, or any of those tools. Something that you're going to have to put a lot of manual effort into, grabbing all those artifacts and those change records manually if you don't have a change management tool that can slip into that tool chain and automatically gather that. So what is the goal of that in the end run? Is to move faster. You don't want to limit yourself to spending precious man hours inputting manual information from all these different channels to then possibly also adding in human error on those reporting as well. So the more automation on that, the less likely you have human error and the more complete your change records will be. And in general, improved visibility. Gartner says that 61% of IT professionals believe DevOps improved visibility into IT process and requirements. And you know, that's looking at that. That can definitely be applied to the service desk as well. And how is that going to happen? Well, we can set up pre-authorized change processing for pre-approved changes. There's a lot of low-level, low-impact changes that can be pushed across, you know, on a day-to-day basis, depending on how your organization does things. But if you set up pre-authorized automations on change requests that you know have been authenticated as successful and a very small to limited impact on your system possibility, then setting up a pre-authorization allows those to get automatically approved and saves, once again, you know, precious moments of manpower and time to get those pushed through without having any issues whatsoever. And the cool thing about that is that you would want to have the ability to, if for say one of those changes happened to cause an issue, you can step back and remove that pre-authorization and say, hey, you know, let's take a look at what happened here, what broke it down, what break things down, and see what caused this. Was it the change, or was it something else in the environment? So another great way is the use of an API to integrate change management into your tool chain. So this is going to allow and open up change management tool to be able to plug in and automate with, I think, probably 99% of the tools that you would find in your DevOps toolchain. And this is going to really allow you to capture those records and artifacts in entirety automated. So you're removing that human error and the possibility of having any wrong records or wrong kind of notations of what happened throughout either the course of you know, the code push or anything else that might happen. And finally, the benefits of doing this. Well, you can, okay, you've heard a lot, automate the capture of all change artifacts across the DevOps toolchain. I think that's been pretty covered well now. You're eliminating possibility of human error, and you're making sure that everything is captured, which is great when it comes time for risk or compliance auditing. That no one wants to get stuck with an incomplete history of change, and that's only going to boost your business and your IT. You can also streamline the change approval process, which we touched on a little earlier, really making sure that those low-impact change and frequent change requests are automated until either not needed or until something happens to say the otherwise. And finally, quickly, you're able to pinpoint root causes of incidents and problems with history and audit trails. You can go through and look at the history, say, you know, have a certain update that caused a whole myriad of different issues. You can go back and pinpoint exactly where that update was pushed, who did it, and then, you know, possibly reverse and revert back to a previous save point or a previous version if need be to quickly get things back up and running. Then you can then proceed with evaluating what happened or what caused that to go haywire. And finally, the last major point that I have here for today is increasing organizational buy-in with better real-time dashboards and reports. And we'll kick it another quote from Gartner, and what they had to say was, because DevOps does not have a formal framework, IT organizations attempting to implement DevOps principles and practices are often left with little guidance on how to measure the effectiveness of their programs. So what we're looking here is kind of a general and made up some metrics on what we might see for an organization that is utilizing DevOps, at least on the dev and ops side. So, you know, you're saying that you're going to be able to deploy code 30 times more frequently, have 60% fewer failures, and have a change success rate of 60 times more than lower performers. And that's all based off DevOps-enabled continuous delivery methods, you know, offering better stability, better quality coding, and a faster mean time to recovery. And that's all based off kind of some of the points that Barclay touched on, as well as what I just touched on a few slides back ago. But the main point of all this is you need to measure it. You're not going to know how to repeat your success and your performance if you don't know how you got there. And that starts with being able to measure and track your progress as you go through. What does that look like? So define DevOps success KPIs. That's going to be something that you want to make sure to definitely do. You're tracking your key performance indicators, and I was going through and doing some research this week, and some of the major KPIs that DevOps teams seem to use will include deployment frequency, the speed of deployment, and the deployment success rate. But what does that exactly mean for the service desk? And what are the counterparts that we can use to help kind of help that whole DevOps goals? Well, some of the things I was thinking of this week was we could track the speed of escalation. So those incidents that quickly turn into a problem perhaps and then needed to be sent over to issue tracking, we can track that and see how fast our teams are doing that. You can also look at total resolution time. So we can take from the birth of the ticket all the way to the final completion and resolution of the problem and track and see how long that took. And then you can really drill down with that into seeing, okay, where were the breaks and where do we need to really work on? Is it with the maybe the service desk team? Do we have, set up an automation that perhaps routes the tickets quicker, or is that something that's once it leaves our service desk, it's out of our hands, and we can kind of coach and look at figuring out a way we can help leverage that time to fit in with business goals. And finally, recurring incidents, and this is going into looking at what we touched on earlier with, how many incidents, we've had this many incidents of the same type 4 times down months. What's the core issue? So being able to address that and group that easily, we'll be able to then hopefully make a business plan around that and to figure out what is the root cause and how to get that cleaned up and figure it out once and for all. Also, you want a dashboard that has KPI scorecards and graphical reports. You kind of see on the right-hand side what we have going on in Change Gear. So something that fits your business needs and your set SLAs for incident resolution. So something that has, you're able to clearly see and visibly see every time you log into your platform for service desk is something that's great, keeps everyone informed and in the know, and those who know in the know can then make a plan of attack on how to improve their metrics. Finally, the benefits of this, elevated employee engagement interaction leading to a focused and streamlined work efforts is definitely one of them. I know that we made a few changes at my last job when I was a help desk manager, and we made a very, very pointed point to make sure that our whole team knew what was going on, what was our resolution times, what were our escalation times, what was our mean time to resolution, and all of that. And the more that our team knew, the more they were apt to make that extra effort into making sure that not only their individual goals were met, but our entire team's goals were met. And it's a pretty cool thing when you get a unified team and an atmosphere and culture of support and help and really collaboration. If it's right in with the DevOps kind of code of how to roll, and it's when you have a team that bends over backwards to help each other, it makes things a lot less stressful. Finally, real-time data allows organizations to be flexible with their goals as incidents or customer needs arise. And I think we've all been there. We set some lofty expectations. We get into the nitty-gritty of things. And we're a month in, we find that the goals that we have set are extremely out of reach or unreasonable at the time given certain circumstances. So to be able to kind of flex those goals into something that's a little more attainable is great, and it keeps everyone not so much defeated, but motivated to hit those goals and take that incrementally in steps. And finally, increased ROI, as less man hours are needed to facilitate the collection of data. I don't know anyone who would want to sit there and crunch numbers and spend hours putting stuff together when by the time they finish, the data is then outdated and need to start that whole cycle again. So to be able to automate all that information to a single dashboard is key. And that kind of covers the 3 points. I didn't know that I have some great experience here over at SunView with our Change Gear platform. We've got a whole service management suite set up, and a lot of the things that I find extremely important, such as automation and being able to promote incidents and using automations for notifications and all of that, we've managed to get into our product. But the biggest thing is we do have a whole site that's actually devoted, part of our site and our blog that's devoted directly to DevOps. If you want to swing by and check out more and see what we're doing over here on our side of the pond, you go to sunviewsoftware.com/learn/DevOps, and we have a ton of webinars, blog articles, infographics and whatnot, and a whole bunch of other great learning tools and resources for that sort of thing. Ollie, that was it from my side.
Great, thanks, Adam. It's a really detailed overview of kind of DevOps in practice, particularly with automation. That's really interesting. So I mean, if I could welcome back Barclay, and what we'll do is we've got a couple of questions here. So we've had two really detailed presentations. We don't have a great deal of time left, so I've got two questions that I think need to be asked to both of you. So we'll kind of do it hopefully as a bit of a panel session. So to start off with, from Jamie, how quickly can an enterprise get started with a change management solution for DevOps? So if we start off with you, Adam. Or what?
Sorry, I was muted on that. Sorry.
So did you get the question there?
Yeah, I think I got the last half of that. Can you repeat it real quick, and I'll get rolling?
Yeah, sure. So how quickly can an enterprise get started with a change management solution for DevOps?
Oh, I'd say right away. It doesn't have to be full bore into everything. So what you can do is you can get at least the basis. Every company is going to need change. You're going to want to track that no matter what. So everyone's got compliance reporting issues and really standards that they need to be held to in specific industries. So if you start small and start with just getting it in place, and maybe getting an individual or two or a group of people that are dedicated to running that change and making sure that the processes are done, and actually creating those processes to begin with. You can get started on that right away, and then as you go, you can progress and you get more advanced in your stages. You can start to build those automations that I touched on, as well as start to get your dev team involved with creating integrations or connectors with your other applications in your tool chain, so you can make sure you start bringing all that information and storing all the changes and all the information that you needed to make sure your audits and your history are 100% complete.
Great, excellent. I mean, Barclay, do you agree? Do you have any other kind of advice to throw on top of that?
I mean, you can start things. You can always start things quickly. It's how long it takes to, and then depending on the size of the organisation and the complexity. With things like change management, where you need to have a kind of universal agreement of how it will be used. Not that you have to have committees that take 6 months to agree things, but you do need to have people who are bought into how it works. So that does take time, and there's, on the cultural side of the fence, you need to work on the people and the people responsible to make sure that they understand, are bought in, and are participating in developing those processes. I think where automation is involved, you can do things very quickly. It's just getting the approval around about what that means. So for different types of change, you need different types of inputs, different RACI approach, and so on. And as long as you understand what's involved in that, then you can build that iteratively. So you can start, but it does take a little bit of time for these things to really embed.
Excellent, thank you. So, like I said, we're sort of running out of time, but I think we've probably got time for this last question. So, since we're all business enablers, why are there conflicts most of the time between the service desk and other back-end support teams, and how do we reduce this? So, if we start with you, Barclay.
Well, that's the perennial question, and it has a historical legacy, which I won't bore everybody with, but basically I suppose it's taken a long time for service desks, help desks to gain we've been talking about respect and blame culture, that originally they weren't seen as being important or valuable by IT people themselves, never mind their users. So that's taken us a long time to get to that point where it's taken more seriously, and it's always easy to blame process. It's always easy to blame other teams for things. So I think the way the kind of silo approach, the way that IT organizations have evolved and been set up, hasn't helped that. And that's been focused too much on technology silos rather than business or value streams, I think, probably the way we might want to describe it. So, that's the way it is. We just have to deal with that. The way to solve it is to do the things we've been talking about, is a combination of automation and showing value, and also ensuring that we're doing the right things culturally and socially, and in terms of communications and collaboration with other people.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it is an age-old question now. I can remember that when I was an analyst on the service desk. So in your experience, Adam, is that a similar experience, or do you have a different view?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, 5 years ago, I was running into the same issues, it sounds like probably a lot of people now are, and I had no idea that this would play so big into DevOps as your culture. If it's hard enough to get a team of service technicians who are 100% trusting and okay with going to each other with help, so that streamlines into communication. I mean, if your team has great communication, then you can start to build those bridges with your development team or with your ops team, perhaps. And really, at the core is collaboration and communication. Without that, you're not going to get anywhere. So even all the automations in the world can get you, so far without the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to help you out and you're going to help me out, and we're going to get this thing done together. So absolutely, communication is at one of the paramount things I've always found as a service desk manager to making sure that things run smoothly.
Excellent.
Just to add to that, trust is the other. Communication, collaboration requires trust. So that's the thing that there hasn't been between service desk teams and many others for some time. And I think what we're saying with DevOps is that we don't have time to argue about those things. We need to build that trust so that we can actually collaborate and communicate effectively.
Yeah, because I mean, that's operations are all about stability and keeping customers happy, and development's all about change and movement, isn't it? So I suppose there's always that disconnect. Like you say, there isn't time to worry about that anymore. Well, it's been great having two DevOps experts on. So thanks, Adam, and thanks, Barclay. The excellent presentations, and thanks for asking those questions. And thank you, SunView Software, for sponsoring the webinar, and of course, thank you to everyone who's turned out to join us today. So cheerio, and I hope to see you all again soon.